India was kind of mature enough to have a car magazine.
Motorsports also, we have got many people who have been part of it. India is still not evolved as a country where people can take up motorsports as a career option.
What inspired you to make this documentary?
India was capable of organizing that kind of rally.
Hey everyone, Jainam this side. Welcome to Round the Clock, an exciting initiative by Reborn India Film that celebrates Indie cinema by bringing you some of the best and most unique films to your screens all year long. Today, we are diving into Breaking the Barriers, India's Race to Glory, a thought-provoking documentary series that recently got screened as a part of our program. I'm thrilled to be joined by the brilliant director and producer of the film, Mr. Sujit Aradhya, and the very talented Mr. Gautam Sen, a pioneering auto journalist, author, and vice president of FIVA. Plus, we have our festival director, Mr. Rahul Agarwal, who will share his insights on curating this amazing film for the Round the Clock. So let's begin. So, as a person who is not into as much into the sports culture, I was frankly taken away by the introduction that it gave me to the world. And there are so many instances that I felt that we have been focusing on the American culture, on the British culture of and the German culture of motorsports, but not as much as it happens in India. So then we realized, there has been so much history, so much backstory happening, even before since independence, and something like major could that could have come out of it. So this is frankly one of the most uh, thought-provoking documentaries for me that I've seen in a while. So to Sujit ji, what inspired you to make this documentary?
Yeah, thank you, Jainam. And I'm happy that Mr. Gautam Sen also could take some time out and join us, who is part of our film and is a protagonist who has spoken about and helped us in enlightening a lot about the motorsports. Now,
Yeah.
like you rightly said, let me put this across. The young generation of India knows about
Mhm.
Lewis Hamilton, they know about Michael Schumacher, they talk about Verstappen and all. There
Yeah.
were many heroes in our own country which our own guys don't know, or it
Right.
would be buried in history if we don't speak about it. So that is what was one of the ideas that why we should do it. And I have spent more than 12 years with my son going around India racing for his racing career and all. Where coming from an advertising background, I found that there is a beautiful story that needs to be told and nobody had spoken about it. And when we used to travel to Europe, people didn't know what is happening in India. So this led
Mhm.
me to discovering that how we can understand about this, what is that happened in India, and that provoked me to do the film on Indian motorsports.
So how did you go on about researching and gathering information on this documentary? Like,
Yeah, so this all started. This all started, one by one when we started doing the research, who, what, and all the things, and we started digging deeper and deeper. And we met most of the racing people of the earlier generations of racers and all. But like whenever you do a story of a documentary, it is as good as doing a journalism. Like you need to do a proper research. You need to have proper people to give you authentic data. That is when
Mhm.
we went on searching, and that is how I got introduced to Mr. Gautam Sen when I sent a message, because I read two of his books before even knowing Mr. Gautam Sen. I had read his book about Indian automobile that he had written, and
Mhm.
then I reached out to Mr. Gautam Sen, and he gave his time and schedule, and like that was helpful. And our team in France, Mr. Gautam Sen lives in France, so our team was able to go and capture his point of view. We wanted automobile journalist who had been through this time, is because like an athlete will talk about his glory, but giving it a complete different perspective about how the sport evolved would have been possible only with top level auto journalists like Mr. Gautam Sen and Bob Rupani.
So, Gautam ji, you have been in the industry for quite a while. How did you begin as a how did you start writing about motorsports?
Well, I was, in fact, you're right in the sense that I was in the industry before I was in journalism, in the sense that once I had completed my post graduation in business management, the job that I wanted when I was doing my business management was a job with Maruti Udyog, which that time in 1984 was a brand new company. They had just started making cars from 14th of December 1983. And when it came to camp, they came looking for camp at the campus at the business school, the three leading business schools in India. They came looking for people to join them. They came to my institute, which is the one in Jamshedpur, XLRI, Xavier Labor Relations Institute. And for me, that was the job I wanted because I've always been crazy about cars. Since a kid, I've always been crazy about automobiles, about cars, and since 1970s, I've been buying car magazines in Calcutta, which were the English and the American magazines that used to come as second-hand material months after it had come out in their respective countries. And I used to pay good money to buy those because I had a passion for them. I really liked the whole world of automobiles at every level, whether it was design, whether it was motorsport, whether it was other kinds of events. I was always interested. And then when Maruti gave me came to campus, I got the job. That was a dream job for me. That time it was a brand new company, uh, making a brand new car with a totally different management culture and style. And I joined them, and it was very, very exciting the first few years. But I also felt, I wouldn't say I felt, it so coincidentally happened that I met a gentleman who was a publisher and in Bombay. I mean, at the time I was looking up to the regional office in Bombay. And I kind of mentioned to him that India is right. It's time for a car magazine in India. India was kind of mature enough to have a car magazine. And I would, if anywhere that I could help, I just want to help. I just want to contribute in terms of articles. And this gentleman said that, come and meet me, which is what I did. And he says, why don't you become the editor? Why don't you start the, I have the publishing setup. I already have a brand name registered. Why don't you become the editor of the magazine? So that's how we started India's first automobile magazine, which is Indian Auto, which was the first. And then subsequently other magazines followed. And then I also launched Auto India, which went on to become the world's largest, India's largest, highest circulating magazine ever in terms of, let's say, ABC certified circulation, not making false claims or whatever, but that's the thing. So anyway, that's how the magazines thing started. And when we're doing the magazine, of course, logically, motorsport was very much a part of that. So we did road tests, we did bike tests, we did tests and evaluations and motorsport. And in fact, the second issue of the magazine, the cover story was the Himalayan Rally in 1986. And since then, and not only did the magazine cover the Himalayan Rally, I also personally got very much involved with the rally at that point of time, which was being run by Mr. Nazir Hussain on the organizational side. And my whatever attempts at motorsport was much more amateurish. I didn't have the money to, have my own car and race or rally. So I would go as a navigator or something like that. So that's how the thing was. So there was motorsport was very much a part of, let's say, the journalism or the writing and the stuff that was happening at that point of time. It was very exciting. India had a motorsport history and culture. It goes back to 1904, where the first event was held. That time I wasn't quite around. I'm old, but not that old. But there are, of course, records of that. And then later on, it's initially when we were, writing these magazines in the 1980s and 1990s, we were talking about events that were happening there and then. But then you kept meeting this older generation of people, hearing what they were saying about what had happened in 1980, the first Himalayan rally.
This is a really twisty mountain bit, there are lots of power.
Westport, Missouri, is nevertheless very spectacular. It's simply too early in a very long event for heroics now.
Or 1977, when the London-Sydney cars went through India. Or the 1968 London-Sydney, when again cars had gone through India. Earlier. So then you started doing more and more research. I started doing more and more research on this. And that's how I was able to trace back that the first, let's say, motorsport event that happened in India and probably in Asia was in 1904. And then soon after in 1904, 1905, 1908, there were these other reliability trials. So, that kind of, let's say, research or finding of the information. And I'm not saying that we have found everything. It's not exhaustive. I'm sure suddenly one more documentation will arrive someday, sometime, somewhere, and say in 1980 there was a peculiar race in, I don't know, on Marine Drive or something like that in Mumbai. So it's never complete, but the research had been going on for a while, and that's how all of this went into a couple of my books, and still keeps going into various information, other kinds of research aspects on that. So that's how it kind of developed over the years.
Yeah, just adding to Mr. Gautam Sen, what we would also like to say, this film, we don't claim it as an historical film or anything else. It is a journey of what happened over a chronological order. Motorsports also, we have got many people who have been part of it. And in our film also, we show that as a disclaimer, saying that, everybody for us who was involved in motorsports is a hero. But, you have a time frame, you have limitations and all other things. So we have covered as much as possible. That is what has happened in the film. And just to add another point is Mr. Gautam Sen is from Calcutta, where motorsports started in India. So that rich heritage and that exposure what Mr. Gautam Sen has got is what is, I think, perhaps put him into the forefront in this industry. Yeah.
So, Mr. Suli, my question is, while writing the documentary, how did you script it? How did you when these two events, like you went it into chapters, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So how do you plan that this chapter should be in this and this was the writer? Now, how did you make that the script should be that draft and its screenplay and everything? So how difficult was that as well?
Yeah, so okay, for me, I was a first-time filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. Though I've done television commercials, though we have done many brands, exercise and other things. For me, the first thing was a challenge was to write a script. So I registered myself with Script Writers Association. I understood how to write a script. It took me 2-3 months to understand this. There was a strong desire that I had to make this film, and I had to make this film good. That was the idea. And I also had a strong feeling that the unsung heroes of your people who have done so much needs to be, brought to the world. That was the idea. But since you asked me to script it and other things, see, documentaries you don't script first. The documentaries you do research and then you go to people, then you talk, they take their interview bites and then convert their interview into transcriptions. And from there, then you start doing the script that this should come here, this should come here. And then we fix the chronological order. So, once we did that, one by one, episode wise, there were missing gaps, missing links. So that is all how we fixed it across. I think if you look at it, Mr. Gautam Sen's part comes early in the beginning of the film. But it was not planned and shot in the beginning. That is later on after we shot, then we put the storyline, then we said that, okay, Mr. Gautam Sen has to come in the beginning to explain 1904, to explain when it started and all. But overall, we just went, met people, interviewed, and then the script was done later. And it was challenging to do that.
Why documentary, but not in a fiction form or something like this, but non-fiction form?
So since I was doing it for the first time, I wanted to be safe. And the investment would go into huge numbers if we want to do or recreate this gone by era is not going to be a small thing. And see, this is a story which is a knowledge. You're sharing a knowledge or you're talking about things that have happened. And documentary is the right way. You're not projecting one person as a hero here. You're talking about a timeline of what happened in India. So documentary is the right way to do it. That's what I felt.
Mr. Gautam, what's your opinion on this? It was fine to go through documentary or it should be filmed like we used to film in commercials and things?
See, honestly, I think in the first instance, I think the documentary aspect is the most important because to put it on record, in terms of writing on books, of course, I have done that. And I hope there'll be others also who will also add to the history of India's motorsport in text, in form of writing. Nobody reads anymore. So it's a bit useless, I must say, not your generation. So let me add that. So what's happening is that you need to now take that obviously to a point where that can be translated into something that's more interesting and entertaining. And documentary is probably the next step in terms of putting on record and putting it on record for one, for another, making it very interesting and informative. And when it comes to probably doing a movie, which is the entertainment part, where of course you can't put everything into a movie because you can't have a movie that spans from 1904 to 2024 and be linear and make it exciting as a movie. I don't see that ever kind of working that way. You might probably do is to focus on a few characters at a certain moment of time. That becomes a movie. So movie, I would think, is always a slice of time or a slice of a period, typically works as a good movie, as a good film, and that's entertaining. But that does not tell the entire story. So I think each has its own, let's say, place. If you want a really detailed information, it's probably a book. If you want to have something which is less detailed but more interesting and entertaining and want to sit for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours and watch on a screen and be told it's a documentary. Or if you want to be entertained, it could be 2 hours of fantastic entertainment, but then you just get a little slice of that whole story. You can never take the entire story. If you see something like the movie on Winston Churchill, if you tell his whole story, we have, as Indians, have a lot to say, which is not in the movie. The movie shows only a little slice of his life, which is what is important. So I think each has its own place. So I would think that maybe, and I'm sure the documentary is going to be very successful. Once it's successful, it might give the idea to somebody to say, hey, let's do a movie out of it. Let's do a movie of that race that went through India in 1977, or the first Himalayan rally, and the politics that was involved in it, which was quite terrible in its own way, or whatever. There could be a particular point or a particular part of it that becomes the subject of a movie.
Yeah, just adding to Mr. Gautam Sen's point of view. See, whatever we have done, we are going to do it in four seasons. That is exactly why took a lot of time. Is this season one what you guys are going to see, which is 4 hours of content, which has 8 episodes, is just with a timeline between 1980, no, 1949 to
48,
1989.
49.
1949 to this is just a 40 years of story about the abundant airstrips that were used as a racetrack. So that is one season. Now season 2 will come, which will have a story about how Himalayan Rally was built in India, how it was done, and it became the envy of the world. And India was capable of organizing that kind of rally in 1980s is a big story. So for us to tell it in 2 hours is not possible. Indian motorsports cannot be told in 2 hours. We at least need 16, 17 hours. So that is why we went to make it a documentary. Yeah, and also this is the book I was referring to of Mr. Gautam Sen, which inspired me. You are able to see it?
Yeah.
That is where we started our journey of understanding motorsports. Thanks for this book, Mr. Sen. And it gives a lot of insight, That's where my journey started.
Yeah, Sujitji, you once mentioned that, even now you mentioned that the series is being shot. Like the second season is being under post-production, and 3 and 4 are to be shot. So for that massive of an info, how difficult was it to track all the people, who are still there and who are still in the industry, are still talking and still doing taking steps so that the culture keeps on going. So how difficult, how challenging was it to track those people and let's do this documentary, and how long did it take you to make the
See,
first
the film research took us close to 2.5 years. To identify and to reach to people, it took us close to 2.5 years. There were instances where we went to shoot people and then they refused to give us interviews. That has also happened. And finding people, then taking their appointment, going to their place, filming is a lengthy process. It is not like a fiction movie where you have everything in script and everybody comes to one place or a studio and then you record everything and come back. Here is somebody, the Maharaj Kumar of Bardwan was sitting there in Gujarat. So we had to take his appointment, book his time, then my time, the camera crew's time, everything. Then we fly there, then we get it done and come back. So we traveled all around India, and fortunately I have a good friend and a team in France. And with Mr. Gautam Sen, as soon as we got his appointment, they were able to reach there in France, and we could film him in France. And then we had to film about Mr. Vijay Mallya, which was also happened in London, which was something that we could do it over there. These are some of the things, taking appointment, going from one place to other place took a lot of time. Research took us definitely 2.5 years. And if you ask me now, with this 2.5 years of research, we are ready for season 1 and season 2. We've still not started anything about season 3 or season 4. But it would be more easier and better is because now once we get this film, the dots getting connected fast. It was just the motive to do it the beginning was tough, but I think going forward, it will automatically get connected.
When it comes to motorsports, the culture is represented mostly by movies as far as the young generation goes, movies and games, I would say. So when I see movies now like Ford versus Ferrari or Le Mans or Rush, movies like Rush. So there is an inner turmoil, that emotional turmoil that characters go through that shapes how they take their decisions. Like when it comes to Japanese Grand Prix, there's this driver called Niki Lauda who retires from the race like midway because now he has something to care about. So while you were researching about the people who were in the Indian motorsport industry, did you come across any of such stories? This is for Sujit ji and Gautam ji both. Did you come across any of such stories that someone who would have changed their decisions based on things that are happening in their life, or while they are racing, there might be a fear because when it's about the drivers, the people who are actually very well known are the ones who don't have any fear. That's the public perception of these public perception of the players. They don't have fear, that's why they are in the lead. But have you come across the stories where there is the super emotional turmoil that they fight through, or where they thought of giving up, or maybe they gave up, and that you felt was very heartwarming and heart-touching?
Yeah, Gautam, you would like to go first, or?
Yeah, I would say that I think maybe I should probably, my feeling, Jain, whatever little bit of motorsport that I have been involved with and what I've seen and what the people have known is fear is not the aspect of the issue or the factor. It's a question of confidence and not having confidence. I think that's the real difference. Is that once you are fairly confident of your skills and your abilities, then you don't have to worry. You're there. You're competing. You have adrenaline. You have You're right in the midst of it all, and you're fighting every inch of the way, every bit of the, every second, every split second counts, and you don't think about anything else. So there is the aspect of fear doesn't come up, I think, in that situation ever again. And if somebody is fearful, then wouldn't have the confidence. I mean, the point is that. So if the day you lose confidence in what you're doing is when you say, okay, it's time now to retire, to put up my gloves. So that's the whole thing. So, but that's again not a question of fear. They don't lose confidence because they got scared. They might have lost confidence simply because they realize that probably they are now getting a bit old or aging, and they don't have the same reflexes that they had, last year or a few months ago or whatever. Right. And that's an aspect of it. It's a question of the fact that they might have lost confidence in being able to be there, right there at the top level. Because the same people who retired will come back and do other kinds of events, which are not, which is probably relatively less demanding. So it's not because they left Formula One because they were afraid. They left Formula One when they realized that they're not capable anymore, or they're not right there. Or if they have left voluntarily, enough number of times they get fired. That's a different matter. But if they left voluntarily and they go to another level, or they probably start doing something different, and you will see that all the time. All the racing giants have then, either gone to Le Mans, done endurance racing, or they've switched to rallying for sometimes, or other kind of areas. So it's not a question of, I think it's not a question of fear as much as an aspect of confidence and lack of it, or losing it. And then, okay, there could be an aspect of responsibility, which is a different matter. When you start having a family and start having children, and you start having certain responsibilities, then you say, okay, maybe I need to be more responsible. I need to be a more responsible father. And in which case, I shouldn't take the risks that ought to be risked. I'm not scared. There's no fear hasn't come in still. They're not afraid. It's just that they have a sense of responsibility towards whatever, their family, to the wife, to the girlfriends, to their parents, to their children, or whatever. And they feel that, okay, it's time I didn't take unnecessary, I didn't, carry on with a career which is excessively risky. So I think it's more of that, I would think. So it's not, the fear is probably the wrong word to use in this aspect. If there is the slightest of fear, you wouldn't be in motorsport at all. Forget it. Then you shouldn't be in this area, and that's how it is. And that I don't think, and that doesn't come in suddenly. It's like 20 years of racing and say on the 21st year you start becoming fearful. No, I don't think that happens. That's what my feeling is. So I don't know what Sujit feels about this. Now, what you felt, what you got in terms of reactions from people and stories, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So in the film, when we were doing the interview, when we met various people, I have never came across a single case where they said they have to move on from motorsports because they had fear or anything else. The major reason people have retired, like Mr. Gautam rightly said, is either the age factor or the financial factor. Some places people moved on because motorsports is very expensive. These are the only two cases. And to add to you, there is one gentleman by name Vidhi Prakash from Coimbatore. He has been racing for the last 50 plus years. He's now 85 and he's even today racing. So this film will talk about a story of a man who started at his teenage. And today, you will be thinking at 85, can he drive a car? He's racing, boss. He's racing with the young guys and winning trophies. Now, this is a story, an inspiration story that we want to add up in this kind of film. And making a film, it is more about inspiration that people can draw and, how they came across all these challenges. This is about the story. But in research, I have never found anybody who has given up motorsports out of fear. Fear is not a word that exists in motorsport. It will be basically only financial or a responsibility. That's exactly what, like Gautam sir said, that's the thing.
Right.
Yeah, so you wanted to add something, Mr. Sen?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit about, I must say, again, I haven't done my homework on this, but an interesting case would be someone like, not Indian, a gentleman called Sobieslav Zasada, who was a Polish rally driver, who drove through India twice. In 1968, he drove through India for the first London to Sydney rally in 1968. At that time, he was not leading, but he was in the top 3 or 4 place. And in 1977, he was leading the rally when he arrived in India. And from Delhi to Bombay, when long before the Golden Quadrilateral, long before the highways and all that, when you just had this 2-lane road between Delhi to Bombay, he did Delhi to Bombay in less than 12 hours, a little over 11 hours. Okay. I think that to me is absolutely crazy. It's incredible. I mean, I think it's impossible to do, even if you're on the highway and you block the road. I'm not sure anybody can match that. And that's Zasada. And Zasada was a European champion. That's which would at that time make him the world champion, because World Championship as a concept started subsequently. So anyway, this gentleman Zasada, he's now 91 years old or 92 years old. He's over 90. And last year, he went back and participated in the East African Safari again when he was 90 years old. Okay, so forget about fear and all that. And he came back and he was highly competitive. He was coming something like seventh. It was a top 10 ranking. Okay, till right at the end, last stage or so, I think he had an incident, and that knocked off. By the time the car came back and they could repair and get it back, he had lost places. But that's it. So someone like him, that's a story. And as you're saying about 85, he's 90, and a world level, top level with the top drivers today with the modern machinery, right? And so that's something. So I think it's a question of, I mean, obviously he doesn't have the same capabilities he had 40 years ago, 50 years ago, clearly, and he's much older, he doesn't have the same, but still fit enough. So I think fear was never an issue, just to give an example of that. So there are stories like that, I think, and I'm sure the more Sujit is now going to meet many more people, there are already stories like that, and there'll be many more of these stories which will come out in the Indian context, which is no less fascinating and which needs to be put out there.
Right. So while sticking to the film and where it's been screened, I've been noticing that as far as I can say that young generation is not that deep into the motorsport culture, but I would say that the culture still exists because uh, when when the news came out that in Chennai the shows were houseful, and in the south the shows are really going really like flourishing. People are actually coming in and checking the shows out just to know what's happening in the industry. And when I compare it with Mumbai, so I realized that Mumbai used like back in the day, as per the documentary as well, and as per a little bit of information that I gathered, I realized that Mumbai was also a major spot for the motorsport culture. Like back in the day, the London Sydney Rally would pass through Mumbai. So over the time, that culture gradually declined. So what do you think might be the reason, and like how do you think like it can be gradually brought back up?
Yeah, so, so if you ask me, that the answer is there in the film. The answer is completely clear in the film that people don't know why. It is more of urbanization, the space that is required for a thing, and various things that I think the film, you should go through the documentary to understand it exactly, because people have spoken about it, why this things has happened. Of course, there is a lot of interest for motorsports. What we are also trying to do through this film is to create the awareness. There is a lot of awareness is not available, because when a kid wants to say that, I want to get into motorsports, the first thing the father and mother will say is it safe and all the things. This kind of education has to happen, how they did it, how safe is motorsports today. Like comparatively, globally, it is very, very safe. And what are the kind of avenues that are there in motorsports? Like, do you want to do a rally, or do you want to do a racing? Do you want to get into four-wheeler or two-wheeler? So these kind of descriptions are not aware to people. And India is still not evolved, according to me, based on my research, not evolved as a country where people can take up motorsports as a career option. Like it is still in a stage where people are only thinking as a hobby or as a part-time and other things. Unless awareness is created, I don't think India will think in this line of having something like in Europe. You have motorsports engineering. You will never see that in India for next, at least unless awareness is created, or that kind of events are there. So if you look at it, 365 days there are events happening. 52 weekends there is continuously events happening. More than 200, 300 events happen in India. But the current thing is that there is a lack of knowledge. There is a lack of support system in terms of big brands coming onto the motorsports. So that is also where we are trying to promote this film, is to get people aware of it. And by the way, if you know, India is the largest young crowd, and today we are the largest spectators for F1 on TV or any medium. I don't have the exact data, but it is around 45-50% of the viewers of motorsports is from India. If you're looking at that numbers, then there is a lack of awareness. Awareness has to be created.
I mean, when it comes to awareness as well, I would say, Kev, one of the reason of affecting that awareness is because uh, as not a mainstream sport, like as people are that much into cricket and football, as not that mainstream, the biggest exposure Indians have, especially the parents, as you mentioned, your parents are not being that supportive, is when something about motorsport, something about car racing makes it to the news when some mishap happens most of the times,
Correct.
or when they are taunting their children that why are you playing the games like so much? Why are you playing these dangerous kind of games? Or why are you like when you play such games, you will just go on and do the rash driving? So
No,
like
I'd just like to add this point. I had a great opportunity to, when my son got an award, he had a great opportunity to receive an award from the sports minister of that time, which was Mr. Kiran Rijiju. Mr. Kiran Rijiju, I had the video also with me. In one of the speeches at that place, he said very nicely that people say that motorsports is for the rich and privileged. He said, But I understand that motorsports is not for the rich and privileged. It is for the daring, and the his exact words were, it is for the daring and brave hearts. That is how he looked at it. This is exactly the same. Today, you don't have to put your money to race. If you are talented enough, you need to go. There is a science to it. You need to go prepare your brochures, whatever. Go and approach various people to sponsor you. So based on sponsorship and these kind of things, only the talent can go forward. Number one. Number two, to get more sponsors, the institutions like Federation and all should invest more in promoting the sport, getting more people on the tracks, creating awareness. And also this has to be seem like a sport. It is a sport. It requires same number of physical fitness. It requires a huge, intense workout, the diet plans, everything like any other sport. It's not just sit in a car and press an accelerator. It's a science by itself.
So my point is, I think what you're talking about awareness and all that, to tell you the truth, when I started the magazine in 1986, Indian Auto, and we started covering motorsport at that point of time, our circulation when we started the magazine was barely 25,000 copies sold. It went up over the years, and Auto India went to 120,000. But at the end of the day, it meant about 120,000 into maybe two or three people, 200,000, 250,000 people, 300,000 people in India were following or aware of motorsport, aware of cars, aware of motorsport. It wasn't the way it is today with millions on thanks to television, because we didn't have when I was into motorsport in the 70s, when I received magazines coming from the UK 3 months late. I knew a Formula One result which had taken place 3 months ago. I didn't know what was happening today. What had happened the Sunday before that. Whereas that aspect has changed completely. And I think that's quite extraordinary. In our time, Bob Rupani, who should have also been interviewing Bob, used to run a video club where what he would get hold of were international videos, video recorders, video recordings in typical, the good old, what do you call tape formats? What is it called? VHS. That's right. VHS. He would get from abroad, have it couriered to him, bunch of them, giving you the latest WRC rally championship. But that was still a few months out of date. Would come, and then we would all be hungrily watching it and borrowing it and seeing it. We were getting very excited about that. So we were completely out of date with what was happening. So the excitement then and the excitement today is totally different. Today, I don't have to watch a race to know what the results are, because in my certain groups, we know the results. Somebody's cursing Verstappen or cursing Hamilton at the moment, and you know what is happening. So I do think that today, in terms of sheer awareness in India, it's way, way beyond. But the problem is it's all very virtual. It's not involved. You're not in it. You're not. When we were doing motorsport, when we were going to Sholavaram or to the races in Calcutta and Barakpur, we were there. We experienced it. We felt it. We were spectators. Today in India, the few spectators you have are the ones who are traveling to Baku and those three, GPs that took place in India, F1 that took place in India. But beyond that, you don't have that same level of direct involvement. So a lot of people are aware without having seen a single race live, and that is the difference, I think. So it's a bit of a different, I would say, situations and mentality. So I don't think I must say people are much more aware. In fact, sometimes I meet youngsters who I'm really impressed with the kind of information and knowledge they have about what is the score, what is the situation, what's that. And they don't have a driving license, and that is what is striking. I think that's a big difference from then and our time, where we probably had a driving license, we didn't know what was happening because we weren't aware. So what I meant is I think there's a different world now, and I realize that, especially with the success of F1, even in a country like the US, for instance. But F1 is not the only sport, and that's also the problem. That today, if you look at it, most people who are the younger people who are into motorsport, they only know F1, and they don't know very much beyond that. And the fact that there's a huge world, that F1 is barely probably 10% or so of the entire activities, is something that is not still aware of. So I think the fact that in India, we need to probably look at it differently and promote. We can't be obsessed only with F1. I mean, at once upon a time, rallying in India was a big thing. We had the Himalayan Rally, we had a National Rally Championship. Our Indian stars, the local stars, were rally guys. And most of the people who are now part of FMSCI or the management or the administration come more from rallying than from track racing, than from circuit racing. So it's quite a distinct. It's what I meant. Things have changed. It's evolved. So we should not be. I'm extremely optimistic, and something like what Sajid has done, this documentary. Once you have greater awareness, you'll have people doing things to, let's say, promote the sport, that they realize it needs to be done or has to be done. But at the same time, some of it has to take its natural course. You can't force things. So we'll have to allow things to also take its natural course in some way.
So my question was, what's the government input? Like F1 when came to India and it has its controversy with government and it been banned. Again, as government has also changed. So what government has taken input towards Indian racing culture?
I think we'll keep it
Nothing.
away from the government and the politics at this point of time. We'll stick to our film would be better because there is
Let me
pressure to
make
handle this.
Yeah, let me just make one comment. It's got nothing to do with our government, but just to broadly to give you an idea of the fact that motorsport, as you said, can be at very different levels. At least I insist that it's not just Formula One is not only motorsport. It's not the only thing that kind of encompasses motorsport. It's only one aspect of it. But Formula One, and that's the reason why everyone thinks that okay, the 3 races came, it went away, the government didn't do anything or did things to make it more difficult. The argument is a different way. If you look at it today, F1 in the kind of countries it is in, like Baku, as an example, or wherever else it's coming up. It's essentially thanks to the government, not because they're into motorsport. Let's be honest. The reason why they're doing it is because they want to promote their country, to get it known. And I'll give an example that I'm currently involved with a certain country in Europe, which is hardly known. And guess what they plan in amongst to promote the country? Bring F1. So their whole idea, it's a small country which is not rich, which doesn't have the kind of money. They know they will lose money, but they want to bring F1 just to get their country known. They know they will lose money like crazy. So, okay, we do it for a certain number of years, we become famous, then we'll stop doing it. That is probably not the way to do things, So I would think that, and so in that sense, the aspect of the governmental part, even if Sujit doesn't want to touch upon it, just kind of vaguely, I would say that I think we need to separate the two. What are they doing and not doing is not the issue. And I think our government has its own priorities and we have to respect that. Let's put it that way.
So Sujit, like you had clips of the rallies and race while you were put it in your documentary as well. How tough was that to get all that footages? And what was your struggle to get those footages and those videos and put it again to your documentary parts? And as a bus, you don't belong from the industry, you don't have that, but still you were planning to make it in the film and series and that way. So getting that data again, putting it into a documentary and lining up, how was that?
Yeah, so it's a very nice question that you asked. Is the biggest challenge that we had was from 1949 to 1989 is when the cameras were not popular. Photograph was like a big thing. You had to go to a studio to take a photograph. It was not like handily available, and they were not there. People are not recording them. Though we have got a lot of photographs which after I say 60s and 70s, but before that was a challenge for us. So the first season we decided that we will hear from them how the situation was, or we'll refer some photographs and everything. And we got one painter to paint those illustrations. We had to recreate them through art, which is very much appreciated by people who have come and seen the film. And I have got more than 300 of these arts were done. It took us 1.5 years to only recreate those kind of visuals, because you can't just have interviews and interviews going. It will become boring. Then we had to make it a little bit better. So we got that done. And at the later stages, we were able to get some good footages. We sourced it out. We did a lot of research, dig it deeper and deeper, and we were able to buy the rights from British Path, which had a little bit of videos about the London to Sydney rally. So 68 we don't have. We got the London to Sydney rally, the later one, 77 if I'm not mistaken. Right, sir? London to Sydney passed through India in 1977. Yeah.
77 we got that.
Yeah, that kind of videos I was able to get it from the British Path, for which we paid the royalty and taken and used it in the film. And at the later stages of 80s, thanks to Team McDowell's, which was owned by Mr. Vijay Mallya, they fortunately had some videos laying, which we were able to do it. But the quality in terms of the resolution and other things, we were able to retrieve whatever best we can do. That is another video we got. Then in Coimbatore, there was this Lakshmi group. So they, during those period, had one small 6mm roll cameras. The film is very small. So somehow I got a footage of that one reel. The reel had, got fungus and all. And getting that to develop was even a bigger challenge. Then I went to the film division, Government of India's film division. Then we took their help and got that through a vendor, cleaned it up, and then we got those kind of clips, whichever we could restore. In fact, we also have earmarked some of the footages from the film division also. Because if you remember in earlier days, all the theatrical releases should have a news reel that was coming inside the theater. I don't know, Gautam Sen will know and I know because we were born at that era. I don't know about both of you whether you know this, but if you go to theater to watch a film, you had to see the news reel And the newsreel was controlled by the government those days, and they used to only promote whatever government schemes are happening and other things. There we found good footages of Himalayan rally. For 10 years, there was a small clipping. You need to go through a library, you need to sit, you need to see where is this film and other things. So for season 2, we have got some good video footages. Season 1, we managed with whatever we can have, but our idea was to get it illustrated. And definitely 1949 onwards, it was a challenge, and people did. I don't think they envisaged that, this has to be recorded and kept so that somebody like me one day will come and try to make a film. Nobody knows about it. And some of them would have passed hands to hands and got destroyed, or some of them would be there. I'm very thankful to Calcutta Motorsports Club, Mr. Ravi Kumar also. He was having some good data, which he was kind enough to share it with us. From the clubs, I would say it was Madras Motorsports Club and Calcutta Motorsports Club, which were able to help us in terms of retrieving some of the old images.
So while time of doing your R&D, by taking off such data from such a long period, anytime you felt कि no यार अब छोड़ो क्या कर रहा हूँ मैं, means obviously you हो जाता है, features इंसान बना जाता है तो उसी में, but you were making a series and things, any point of time you feel it down or something like this?
Once the film was completed, and when we first time did a theatrical release with you guys in Bombay, that is a time when my team told me, none of them believed that I'll complete this film. They said that he will do it and then in between. But I am a person like this, that if I put my hands on something, I won't leave it halfway. No matter what comes in, no matter what goes, it is not about money, it is not about anything else for me. If I take up any job, then I have to do justice to the job. So I was very clear in my mind. I am now also very clear in my mind that this film will serve as a document or an documented stories of what happened in India. And today, if you dig out anywhere in the world, you will not find any stories in video format that can tell you the gone by era. And like I told, we were lucky, and this gentleman, our protagonists, were kind enough to give their time and they give their interview. So we have people who were the racers earlier, and we have two journalists who have seen this timeline, like Mr. Gautam Sen and Bob Rupani, which was very helpful for us to get this whole insights. So based on that, we have recreated.
Were those VHS ever put into use? Like, Gautam ji said, Bob ji had those VHS where you used to show those information. So were those ever put into use for the documentary? Like, did he have those?
No. What Mr. Gautam Sen told was those were the events that happened in Europe that were coming to India.
Oh, right.
No,
Okay.
VHS. Yeah, you see what used to happen, as you said. I mean, I used to just to give an idea about my when I was running the magazine, and we had to we did do regularly report on F1 and World Rally Championships. These are two things we were reporting in my magazine anyway every month, and other motorsport. And there was obviously this correspondence. I mean, we had contributors. We had this gentleman called Joe Saward, who was famous for Formula One, and there was Mark Hughes for WRC for rallying, who still reports and still does stuff. He's now the grand old man. And they used to send. So they used to basically send once a month, in terms of a deadline, a packet courier would arrive with images and information. So that's the only time we had that information. And then I said, okay, great. We now know where the Formula One championship is. We didn't know till that damn thing arrived. And I would get it good, and it would take a few weeks, but it will be published. And in the meantime, Bob, and I was telling Bob was with the magazine. Okay, this is the result. Okay, so we must get hold of the VHS of this race or that race. So he would kind of order that, and that would then get couriered again from the UK. There would be, and those days again, when you had a race or you had a especially let's say a rally event, I'm sure they got a lot of footage, and then they sat and edited and put it together, which took a few days. So the VHS that came out must have been weeks after the event happened, and then weeks later it would reach us. So it was about more. It was a purely international. In India, nobody had the let's say the bandwidth and the forethought. I think, in a sense, the foresight.
Yeah, sir, only Nazir Hussain had that vision of creating the documentaries. In his film, we have recorded this. He used to go and see the spots where photographers, it gets a beautiful photography, videography, and other things, which I think will be part of our season 2. And that is where I told in season 2, we have good video clippings of the gone by days. Yeah, but 40s to 80s with regard to this racing tracks was very limited with us.
So I'll close the technical aspects of the film. So when you said you found an artist who painted those pictures, and I feel they are very textbooky in the sense, because when I was in school, we had those government textbooks, and they had such kind of illustrations. And my mom's school, I've seen the books because I used to be a big time science nerd, so she had those kind of books. So was this art style always like fixed that way, or did you come across while meeting the artist? How did the art style come across?
Yeah, so each artist has got his own way of looking at things. So this artist, sorry, this artist by name Gavi Gangadhar uh, has this kind of unique art which we liked. In fact, we tried few with those days. It has AI was just at the corner. It has not started when we started. We started this film in 2021. So 2020 onwards after lockdown. So those days AI was just around the corner and other things. So there was another artist who was doing it through computer generated things and they were looking like 3D and all. We did some of them, but we found this one very rich. The ones what we have used. Uh, After checking with 3, 4 guys, we selected this guy, and these were very rich. And I have all of them done in A3 size. And one day we hope to auction those paintings also because they're beautiful. They're really beautiful. And it's only one piece that we have got it done. We have 300 of them telling the story.
Right. Okay, now bringing it back to Yash, since he has been one of the major inspirations for the film, and we also talked about how awareness plays an important role in the culture. So when Yash got into karting, like what inspired him and how did you take it?
Bangalore theater. I didn't want him to be, given that privilege or anything else. I ensured that he purchased his ticket. He and a few of his friends came. They saw it in the Bangalore theater, and after seeing it, he loved it. Number one. Second thing, he said that like his respect towards the seniors whom he has seen has got very high in terms of looking at them as a heroes. And Mr. Chubi Lalwani was once upon a time looking after my son's kart. He was engineering my son's kart for 2, 3 years. So now when he saw the glorious story of Mr. Lalwani, also he said that, "Arey, uncle, I know him," and he knows everybody who were there in the interview. But he could see it in a different way, and there was huge fond respect for him. He liked the way of narrating the story that we have done. He liked the screenplay and everything, and he said the film was engaging. And yeah, the feedback we have got from most of the audience has been very positive. In fact, in Chennai, I think Rahul, you must be knowing that Mr. Subhash Chandra Bose was sitting there in the theater, and people during interval asked somebody to get some shawls, and they felicitated him in a theater. And the theater was houseful. And like in interval, people seeing the Mr. Subhash Chandra Bose and getting all the garlands and the shawls and felicitating was an amazing thing. Like people had so much of emotional attachment to the film. Like they have seen Sholavaram. People like that age and the new age, people are just connecting. Like they're missing. I will tell you honestly, when non-motorsports audience who are seeing this film, they're saying that it's nostalgia. I missed Sholavaram even today. That's how they feel. Sholavaram was larger than life. Sholavaram was one of the biggest events that happened. It is very well and nicely captured in the words of people. Some videos also we have played in the film, and people are getting nostalgic about it. Yeah.
You may add to that about Sholavaram versus, let's say, Formula One and let's say the Booth International Circuit. I think the difference then and now was that a lot of the people who went to see the F1 races in Booth International.
My vision that it has to reach the global audience. It's not just only made for India or Indian audience, because I shared with few of my friends in Europe also who are into motorsports. Like there's something called as motorsports.tv, which is into various videos of racing and everything. So similarly, when I shared this with them, they said, "Wow, interesting stories." So we are looking at a platform that can distribute in maximum countries where Indian diaspora is higher. Number one, because I want people to get inspired from what happened. Non-Indian diaspora also, it is a story about what happened in India, which nobody knows. If today you want to know what happened in UK, in any of the tracks or anything else, you have films, you have various documentaries, you have various videos. What happened in India? Nobody has got any videos. People are only publishing themselves, but as a story that is not available. Okay. And the idea to do this, that is where we are going to do a world premiere of this film in International Documentary Festival, Amsterdam. It is one of the world's largest documentary festival where many people from various platforms, distributors, everybody's coming, and it's our attempt to see if we can find a good place for this film in OTT platform. But before that, we would like to still do some more theatrical releases in India and US markets also, and then do. And we also are looking at one satellite channel, which we are in talks with. Probably we'll edit it even further, only for 24 minutes each episode, and give it to a satellite channel, is what we're looking at.
Cutting is becoming a really really noticeable, very, very hardworking thing with this film especially. So how did you, make the decision, okay, let's cut this? Like you made the 35 or 25-minute documentary, I think.
Yeah.
for the actual thing, and then you cut it to 2 hours 45 minutes or some a close length to that. And now we are planning on doing a 24 minute satellite thing. So how do you plan on how do you take the decision? Okay, let's cut this part. People can watch the entire thing and then get the info. Like, because cutting is a very difficult thing, since there is a very important segment. If someone mentions something in this part and then that doesn't get a follow up in this part,
Yeah.
it creates a problem. So how do you cut your
So
episodes?
I've spent more than 22 years in building brands and doing advertisements and communications. You know,
Right.
like when we started, our story was to be told in 60 minutes. No, sorry, 60 seconds. That's 1 minute. Coming back to this point, so I have spent 22 years in advertising, and our major concern when we do communication or advertising for our brands is to get the communication going in 60 seconds. That's 1 minute, basically. Now, coming back to today's era, we are trying to tell a story in 3 seconds because that's the window you get in social media. So we know how the art of telling a story is as simple as possible. So this experience gives me an upper hand in cutting it to anything, keeping the story very crispier so that the audience do not sleep. And you know, like there are a lot of cases where the protagonist got emotional and the discussions went further and further, and you know, like it goes from one point to other point. So we are very
Mhm.
clear about aware that what the audience will expect to hear and where is the crisp point, and then only we'll take it. Yeah, cutting to 24 minutes, 8 episodes is going to be very tough job because you know, like a lot of crucial things will be missed. But you know, like you have time, you have time. That's what you're going to do. But the best part is going to be seeing whatever you're going to see in the OTT platform will have complete stories that too crispier. And others, whether it is in theater or whether it is in satellite, it will be a condensed version of all these things.
And you mentioned that you are into advertising as well since 22 years, and you know the medium has evolved so much since then to now. Like, even like 60 seconds then and 60 seconds now are like very different. Zameen Asman ka farak, I would say. So while promoting this film, what challenges did you face? You know, in the marketing.
No, currently the challenge we have faced is that I don't come from with a background of a family background where we are already a filmmaker or something. I'm the first generation getting into this. So
Mhm.
probably there will be entry barriers. Probably that is one I look at it. Second thing is I don't know people. I'm just started scouting, going to meet people in various forums and all other things. I strongly believe in this story, and that is why I produced this film without taking somebody saying that, okay, I'll buy it, you produce or something. We did it because we know that this is a very strong story that has to be told. So currently we are facing the challenge in connecting with the right platform, and we are working it through attending various international festivals and connecting within the known circle and trying to do it. I think it's just a matter of time. We should find the right partners.
All right, all right. So this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. And as a fan, I'm eager to see, you know, how the audience is, as and when, you know, it gets distributed even more, how the audiences react to it and how the culture develops, because this is a very important film. And if done right, it could actually lead to a very good rise in the genre. Like, it could start the generation back. Like, it would bring people to the ground, because right now everybody is like playing the games and doing it everything online, and people would actually step out of their house. People would go to the racetracks, and they would look at how the races are happening. They would participate. So this is just the beginning. You know, you are actually the pioneer in this. So I would say all the best, and I hope to meet you soon, and I hope to catch the film soon. So thank you, guys.
Sure, sure, sure.